Season 3 episode 6 is here and so am I, covering all the cut content, this time starting off volume 10, which happens to be my third favorite volume in the entire series, which is only topped by volume 7 and 11.5. So naturally, I am really looking forward to seeing this volume adapted. And honestly, we're off to a pretty decent start, adapting only around 90 pages, which is still a lot, but at least it's not being jammed into 2 episodes. And even if this adaptation might disappoint us all, the one thing that will never disappoint is me making all these videos on the cut content for every single episode, every single week. So make sure to leave a like on the video as it lets me know how much you guys enjoy these videos, and subscribe to the channel to catch my latest uploads as soon as possible. With all that being said though, let's finally dive in. The volume starts with a Hirata monologue, which as expected didn't make it into the anime, which is really sad because we get parts of his backstory along with his thoughts during a moment that's going to happen later in this volume during the special exam. I won't go into details since it's probably gonna get adapted, but I'll give you guys a teaser. During this monologue, Hirata shouts at Horikita to shut the hell up for a moment, and we also get an amazing illustration which I won't show because it would be spoilers for you guys. And that is how this volume starts, setting the tone for this incredible arc. Moving on to the results day, one difference is that Chabashira only announces the final exam results here and the special exam gets announced at a later date. We also get to see some of the results of the exam. Chabashira mentions that Sudo is the student who improved the most the entire year, along with Ike and Yamauchi also improving their scores despite being bottom 2 in the class. The student who placed first in the class was Yukimura and second was Koenji, which Kyo finds interesting because he's never seen Koenji take studying seriously and he thinks that Koenji could easily take the first place if he tried. Horikita placed third and Ayanokoji at 18, which sounds bad until you realize the anime only has 25 students per class instead of 40 like the light novel. So Kyo as usual is chilling around the average section. After that we actually get a conversation between Nagumo, Ayanokoji and both of the Horikita siblings. Kyo stumbles upon Nagumo and Manabu talking. Nagumo also talks about wondering who was the guy who spread all these rumors, looking suspiciously at Ayanokoji. After that Suzune arrives there and the one who called her was actually Nagumo, and then he invites Suzune into the student council and says vague things such as he'll be keeping a close eye on her, trying to get a reaction from Manabu. Of course, the Giga Chat does not care at all and leaves. Also, this is where Kyo tells Suzune to try talking with her brother before graduation, compared to the anime showing it after the Ryuen conversation. Then we finally have the special exam announcement. The anime did a decent job adapting it, but as usual there are skipped scenes. First up, during the announcement, Kyo noticed Chabashira being really anxious while announcing it and finding it hard to get words out of her mouth, while the anime portrayed her as indifferent towards the school's decision. Then we have a rule which the anime skipped, and that is, if the bottom and top placements are tied, then another poll will be held deciding between the two people who are tied, and if they still end up tied, the school will intervene and decide themselves through a special method. Then we have Koenji and Sudo's conversation being cut short. In the LN, Koenji straight up says that he's one of the most useful students in the class and they should not try to go after him. He even says that after this exam, he will reform himself and start taking things seriously, though Kyo thinks that he's just bluffing and doesn't intend to follow through. Moving on to the Ayanokoji group scene. This was also a scene which was cut short with lots of skipped stuff, such as Kyo saying that he's glad the group won't be caught up in his strategy and end up losing. They also talk about who they're going to give criticism votes to. The majority of the group agrees on Koenji, even Kyo himself, and the person who disagrees with Koenji was actually Sakura, saying that even though Koenji is hard to work with, he already provided more for the class compared to herself. Another change was that Ryuen was actually sitting at the same cafe Ayanokoji group was at, and this is where his conversation with Horikita happens. Also, Kyo wasn't that interested in their conversation, but Sakura and Haruka thought that she might be in danger, so they asked Akito and Ayanokoji to go with her. However, Kyo stops Akito and goes there by himself. The conversation was mostly the same as the anime, though they did cut out a scene where Horikita hints that she is aware Ayanokoji did something to deal with Ryuen, which was something she gathered from a talk between Ibuki in one of the earlier volumes if I remember correctly. And another thing to note about this scene is, Ayanokoji thinks that Ryuen will most likely be expelled and he can't think of a way he manages to survive. Then we have the call between Kyo and Kei. This was yet again mostly the same, though they did cut out a funny moment where Kei thinks that Kyo will get criticism votes from Sudo because he thinks that he has a crush on Horikita. Now we move on to the Ichinose scene, which was also mostly the same, at least up until a certain moment, and that is when Arisu approached her in the LN. Instead of Arisu, it was actually Asahina, the second year student related to Nagumo, who came to talk with Ayanokoji. Asahina here actually tells about Ichinose's plan and what Nagumo is trying to do, and she wants Kyo to help Ichinose because she feels bad for her and also doesn't want Nagumo to give millions of points to Ichinose, which was stashed for the second years to use. Moving on, we have a skipped scene with Hiyori at the library. Kyo and Hiyori both quietly read at the library for a while, after which Kyo asks Hiyori about how Class D and Ryuen are doing, and Hiyori mentions that almost everyone in Class D has decided to expel Ryuen, and he himself is just chilling as if he's accepted his fate. Hiyori also says that she thinks Class D doesn't have a chance competing with the other classes if they do decide to get rid of Ryuen. And this is also where we see Kyo thinking that he doesn't want Ryuen expelled, which he himself was surprised by. After that, we get a moment with Horikita where Kyo wonders if she's thinking the same strategy as him, and he's actually really intrigued by how she's going to handle this, which is followed by Hirata asking to meet with Ayanokoji in order to discuss some things. They both agree to meet privately after classes are over, and this is where he gets approached by Arisu and Kamuro while he's heading over to meet with Hirata. Sadly, the anime cuts out all of my girl Kamuro's lines, which really sucks because she also asks Arisu what's the deal with Ayanokoji, and Arisu even tells her that she's known Ayanokoji for a long time. Another thing to note is Kyo thinking that Kamuro and Arisu are quite similar. After that, the three of them walk towards the school's special building, which was isolated, and if you guys can remember, this was also the place where the pseudo incident with the cameras took place during season 1. After they arrive there, Arisu tells Kamuro to leave and says that she wants to have a private conversation with Ayanokoji. And this is where Arisu talks about her father getting suspended and was likely thrown together to expel a certain person, referring to Ayanokoji, compared to them having this talk in the middle of a busy street with Kamuro present like the anime showed. Genuinely baffling as to why they did this, because they cut out a really iconic Kyo and Arisu illustration, which by the way they showed in the season 3 PV as well as the ending song. Finally, the scene ends with Arisu looking towards the camera and Kyo wonders if that was intentional or just a coincidence. And that is all the cut content and changes for this week's episode. Honestly, a surprisingly decent episode, especially visually because I really liked the art direction in this episode and characters actually managed to look on model for the most part. With all that being said though, leave a like on the video if you made it until the end and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Have a nice rest of your day and hopefully see you guys in my next video.